Welcome. Thanks for joining this session, and special thanks to all of you who made that trek all the way from the other side of the event. And thanks to the amazing Q-SYS team for putting together this panel, for making this happen. I'm really excited to be here, especially because we have a panel of subject matter experts, with decades of experience. And I'm really looking forward to hearing their insights and viewpoints on a topic that's so relevant, which is how to leverage the power of AI, data, and platform for workplace transformation. Before we get started, quick introduction. I'm Roopam Jain. I'm the VP of Research at Frost & Sullivan's Connected Work practice. I think a lot of you are familiar with Frost & Sullivan. For those of you who don't know, we are a large global research and consulting firm. We cover a host of industries: automotive, healthcare, industrial, retail, media and entertainment, also real estate. And I'm part of the ICT team. I cover connected work technologies. So we track trends and evolution of next generation collaboration technologies. I've covered the space for over 2 decades, seen some wonderful transformation in our industry. And I think we are at a very, very interesting cusp in our industry in terms of seeing the convergence of AI with AV. We've already seen the tremendous benefits of AV and IT convergence, so we are taking that next leap forward. Before we get started, I think it would be excellent if we get quick introductions from everyone, if you can talk about your background and your role in your organization.
Sure. You want me to start?
With you? Yes.
Okay, I'm Christopher Jaynes. I'm the CTO of Q-SYS. My background is computer science, and then I founded a company in this space and discovered the AV space and got really excited about it. And since then have been driving product development and software development at Q-SYS.
Cool, thanks, Chris. My name is Gary Wright. I'm a director of Charcoalblue Experience, and we are a theatre, acoustics, and experience consultancy company. Quite simply, we create amazing spaces where stories are told and experiences are shared. And for this conversation, for this panel, we do a significant amount of experience design and delivery within the workplace sector for large-scale organizations looking to evolve their employee experience. So I come to this group with a bit of an analog perspective towards using digital and AI in the workplace sector.
Julian Phillips, I'm Senior Vice President at AVI-SPL. I also have the privilege to lead XTG, which is the Experience Technology Group, which in a similar vein to Gary, we design and build immersive experiences all around the world, which is a lot of fun. That's my day job. My side gig is being a complete AI geek. I'm going to geek out a little bit with you through this.
That's great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Dave Rogers. I'm the Senior Director of Global Operations for the Customer Engagement Team at Microsoft. And the Customer Engagement Team, or CET, our charter is to build relationships with the senior executives of our top enterprise customers. And one of the ways we do that is through facilities. So I lead the operations teams that design, build, and operate. We have 46 centers around the world: executive briefing center, experience centers, and innovation hubs. And we're definitely on the AI journey of how do we infuse AI into everything we do, from the customer journey to the spaces themselves.
Excellent. So before we get started, just a little bit of, I'll take a couple of minutes setting the stage. So last year, I think we had a panel in this exact same room on the topic of AI and AV convergence, but boy, what a difference 1 year has made. We have made significant progress. And the conversation is shifting from the why to the how. Last year, we were talking so much about generating more awareness for the benefits of AI, understanding the power and the possibilities of AI, and now we are talking about how to implement AI so that it gives the best business outcomes for your organization, and also how to address the real-world challenges that come with AI. So this is being driven by several transformational shifts that we see in businesses, specifically talking about the workplace evolution itself. So, the last couple of years have been sort of a wait-and-watch approach from business leaders in terms of how they want to view the physical workplace. And it was driven by some solid reasons. They had not finalized their hybrid work policies. There was a lot of wait and watch around how many employees will come back into the office or for how many days. So a lot of technology investments around meeting place modernization, office modernization were sort of put on hold. And we are starting to see that shift tremendously this year. A lot of companies have formalized or at least are getting closer to their long-term hybrid work plans. And so they are investing in creating better offices, better workplace experience when the employees come back into the office. At Frost & Sullivan, we conduct several global surveys of IT decision makers and business leaders, and some interesting stats that I would like to present is 37% of the respondents said that they are going to be building more meeting spaces, more collaborative spaces. And the reason being, when employees come back into the office, they're not just coming to sit behind a desk at their laptop and get the work done when they can get the same thing done at their homes. So they're coming into the office with a whole new set of expectations around better connections, better communication, collaboration experience. So those meeting spaces are becoming very critical part of the workplace experience. At the same time, and this is a very interesting stat, I did not expect to see such a high number, is 24% of the businesses said that they are reducing real estate. Still, we have already seen a lot of real estate reduction, but that is still an ongoing process. So what that means is definitely businesses have to make the most of every square foot in their office. That space optimization, best utilization of that space, and best experience in those spaces is becoming very top of mind. We have worked with the Q-SYS team for almost over 2 years now in defining the term high-impact spaces, putting guidelines around how to create those high-impact experiences, and now we are taking that work forward by quite a few steps in talking about creating high-impact experiential workplace. So that whole journey, and sometimes that employee journey starts from home, even before they get to the workplace. So the experience in the lobby, experience in common places like cafeterias. Cafeterias are not just a place where people go and eat meals. They are actually using it for collaborative use cases like town halls and so on. And all the way up to meeting rooms of different sizes. So that whole lobby to boardroom experience and everything in between has to be transformed so that employee needs are met and the enterprise, the businesses really leverage the best of next generation technologies. But this implementation does not come without challenges, as we know. AI is, and not just AI, different aspects of workplace transformation come with a host of challenges. And I think that's a great topic, question to start with, is where do you see the landscape today in terms of workplace transformation? What are the challenges that businesses are facing? And how are AV technologies helping and address those pain points? Maybe we'll start with you and go down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone knows me, I want to look at it through a positive lens. So I think I'll start there. There are huge challenges that we need to overcome, but the timing couldn't be better at this point. So if you think about what you just said about the workplace transformation, a real estate planner is doing this sort of great rethink about how the space is going to be engaged with the employees in the workspace and how does it support those needs. The timing couldn't be better to solve some of what I sort of call the grand challenges of AV. Some of them are boring and have been around a long time, like meeting start is a problem still, right? If you're invited to the wrong video call, it's still really hard to figure out how do I get this room system to align to my needs. That problem has been around for decades. AI can solve that now. So I think what we have now is a question about how do we pick off those biggest challenges in the workspace that still remain and address it through automation, past automation into intelligence, machine learning systems that learn and react to the participants in the space in ways that just used to be very hand-coded and delivered that became brittle, right? Like anybody could define, hey, I can't find the video cable, let's put on the screen, find the video cable, and maybe even write a system where a camera detects that that event's occurring, and guess what, 10 minutes later a shadow comes in the room, or the video cable got put in a credenza, so that system's no longer relevant, it gets disabled. We've all seen that, and it's hard to create these high impact spaces unless you bring automation through the intelligence side of AI. And I think we're at that point now, which is going to be really interesting to see what problems we start to build. So for me, it's a new path that we can go on that will address a lot of the old real estate planning and understanding about those spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from our experience, I always say that the pandemic didn't change the world. It just moved it forward quicker, in many ways. And we were looking at workplace transformation. We call it you sort of love your experience. We used to call it street to stage. And one of the big things that we started to really understand is that even kind of pre-pandemic, but definitely post-pandemic, there was a whole new attitude towards the workspace environment. What am I coming in for? I can do everything I can at home behind my desk. What am I coming in for? I'm not going to sit behind a desk and do the same thing I can do at home. So that's a challenge that has been trying to be addressed by real estate and by employers and property owners, in the sense that our workforce is now asking something different from us. So our response to that, or our client's response to that, is, okay, so I'm going to bring you for a team building exercise. That's what we're going to do. We're going to collaborate more. But our spaces aren't really set up for collaboration, because we're still linear desks in a row and still kind of working that method, which nobody wants to do. So how we kind of got involved in this work was, okay, we're going to have a group of people who are going to maybe en masse, let's say 50, 60 in a room, but our space doesn't accommodate 50 or 60 in this kind of format. So we need some seating, we need some staging, we may need a screen, we may need audio, and so you end up turning these spaces into very collaborative, engaging spaces with some great dramatic music in the background. And so that has been a transformative shift in how the workplace is responding to employee demand. And it's generational as well. We've got employee expectation demand from older generation who have taken benefits of being at home with children and that kind of stuff. But you've got a whole new generation who's using it for more collaborative engagement, more tech-driven opportunities. And I think where AI is going to really help solve a number of things is, when teams are coming in, they need to be efficient. Don't want to end up scrambling around trying to figure out who should be in what room, or what the breakout should be, or can I just plug my laptop into a Meet setup and it just works? And does that work for everybody, for every type of computer, every laptop, every requirement? Can I do my breakouts as my phone rooms? So spaces are really, really rapidly shifting. And with space comes efficiency. We need to find efficiency, and I think that's where AI is going to really help teams and individuals become more efficient when they're coming into the workplace, do more collaborative engagement.
I've said it many times, and I think we've got to be careful not to miss the big picture, and that is that I genuinely believe we're entering a new era for mankind. This isn't just a conversation about technology that's going to do the transformation of workplace. And what I mean by that is there's a sort of great realization we're beginning to have now that the very act of work itself needs to transform. And I think the technology and how we design space to support that is going to transform with that. But without transforming the actual work, we can throw as much technology and as much design at it, and we're still not going to see change. And I've talked a lot about this thing I call the 90-10 switch, and that is that I believe, whether personally or as organizations, we spend 90% of our time, energy, resources, and focus doing manually and cognitively repetitive tasks that create no value. They are essential because they keep the status quo, they keep things moving forward, but they don't actually create any unique value. And if you think about your own personal calendar and the things that you are required to do, busy being busy, you'll probably realize that only 10% of your time is actually genuinely being creative and problem solving and creating things that have value. I believe in this realization we have the opportunity to invert that and create a 10-90 model where 10% of our tasking, or we only have to spend 10% of our time and energy worried about that tasking because we have AI agents and AI capabilities that are doing a lot of those things that we used to actually have to do. And by the way, way better than we were ever capable of doing it. Now, imagine a world, therefore, where we then become the human beings that we were designed to be. We are actually the ones now spending our time doing the things that we love, collaborating with people, solving problems, being creative. I do believe we have the opportunity, probably not the switch overnight, but certainly it's a model that we can start to work towards. Now, here's the challenge we have. If that is what we all think is the right thing to do, not just for our businesses, but for us as human beings, because we'll probably have much better personal growth, happiness, more money, there's a whole range of other things. And also still jobs. That's also, this isn't a question of AI taking your job. We then have to think, well, how do we enable people to take advantage of that 90% being creative? Because the way we design workplace and the support, especially in meeting rooms and what have you, is actually supporting that old 90 model. We don't use data very well. We use it in an old, redundant way. We're not actually using tools that enable people to be innately creative inside a collaboration. And so there's a whole, with this realization that work itself needs to, and now can change, we need to rethink the way we think about how we design and the tools that we have to enable that kind of creativity. This is an exciting time to be alive. And the reality is that there is no rule book. We can't go back and say, well, how did we do it back in the day? And we've got lessons and we've learned lots of things, and there are many people that said, I told you 20 years ago this would happen. But the reality is that we have the ability to turn what we thought was the impossible into the possible like that. Science fiction we saw is now reality, and we have the opportunity to make it. So I think, yes, we have lots of opportunities to use AI to do a whole range of things to make us more efficient and what have you. But we've also got to tackle that big picture opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to pivot a little bit because my area of focus is more on bringing customers into our spaces versus the employee workspace. And there's huge opportunity, but it all comes down to value proposition. Why would someone invest their time, their money, their energy to come and see you in person? I mean, there's so many opportunities and ways to get information and things these days. So how do you create those experiences that are bespoke to that in-person experience? And so leveraging AI within our facilities and in our spaces, our demos, our conference rooms, gives a whole new palette to create these new experiences that make you feel special and really make it feel like it was worth your time to come and spend time with us. At the same time, most all of our engagements, while they are designed to be an in-person experience, and that's what we'd like, do have a remote participant now. And so how do you democratize that experience when everything is designed around the in-person experience, but we've all come to expect now a much higher bar of participation, both remotely and in person.
Yeah. And see, I want to pick up on that a little bit, and also, Julian, what you said is really interesting. You used the word sci-fi, and I think when we were speaking before the panel, we all know this is not a technology problem. This is an adoption problem. And often, and as an analyst, I have the advantage of speaking with some of the best technology vendors on this planet and also having some real-world conversations with customers. And sometimes I see a big gap between what's happening on the technology front and what's being used and adopted at the ground level. So, and I know when we last spoke, you talked about agentic AI, and that's a really interesting direction for the industry where it is very task-oriented, very contextual, autonomous, and gives that immediate outcome by user personas, by roles. Can you go a little deeper into what can we expect that makes AI more digestible, more usable, and has an immediate impact on the business?
Yeah, I think we're definitely entering in that next phase. So I think right now when people hear AI, they think of ChatGPT and Copilot and ways to help transcribe your meetings or make you more productive or things like that. The next phase, which we're just right at the beginning of, is that agentic phase where you have an agent that is reasoning over information or reasoning over input from various sensors, whether it's the camera or microphones or temperature sensors or what have you, and making decisions and taking actions without you having to write code or be very prescriptive about what happens. And so that's the most exciting part for me. Everything from completely changing how you look at your utilization of your space, completely changing your preventive maintenance model. If the agent knows that there's always this room's always utilized on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., then turn on the lights, turn up the air conditioning, set the meeting for me. Right? It can be a very, very personalized experience. So my agent knows all my preferences, it knows my schedule for the day, it knows what room I'm going to. So I can have a very bespoke experience without having to program it, set it up, plan it, and all of those pre-planned prescriptive tasks.
Can I add to that? Because that's really interesting. So, because I'm starting to see a pattern, right? The emergence of agentic AI, of course, is pretty natural, right? AI generative can now speak to itself to take action. We can wire it to other systems that do even real-time control in rooms. But what's interesting about it, if you take a step back and you think, well, how do I use AI in the workplace today? It's sort of like I have a companion that might know quantum physics far more than I do, right? And I can ask it questions. That's pretty interesting. But Julian, what you're hinting at is like there's that 90% today that it's not about me having a great dialogue about quantum physics. It's like I need to send 10 emails to just check in on folks. That's going to take most of my day. So that's the agentic piece, and I think that's a real positive thing. As we shift to that, the agentic AI, when we read about that and think about it, it's like that's the AI that's going to do the part of your job that you don't like. Right. Now, there's another piece that's the actuation and control in the space. This is why I get excited about how AV has evolved. We've built all the sensors, the eyes and the ears, the actuators in the space, right? And now AI can utilize that. It can sense, and it can actuate in real time into the space to support your needs, which I think is a really interesting thing to sort of keep our eye on, because it's an area that we've needed. It's been the missing link, I think, in making our spaces more manageable, more interesting for people to come to from their home office and really engage with one another in better ways. It's really been, if you think about it, the frequency of actuation in the AV space has been like the 5 to 7 year refresh cycle. That's not fast enough. So when I say this room isn't really configured properly for my, active learning environment, shouldn't it just change? Shouldn't something happen right then instead of someday talk to facilities and we respec the space? Not good. So.
The good news on that is that the reason it was 5, 7, even 10 years is that all of the AV technology was capitalized under the lease term of the building, and so therefore that's why we had 10-year refreshes. No one's signing a 10-year lease right now, I can tell you that. So I think that's an opportunity to do higher refreshes. That's another good opportunity for us. But I mentioned about this is a new era, and in new eras, every single one of us has the opportunity to just make stuff up. I make stuff up every single day. In fact, I invented a new word the other day. And Caroline, if you search on ChatGPT, it'll tell you that I did. Anyway, so it's called datagentism. And I just want to bring in the concept of, talking about agents, not necessarily agents as those that just do all the drudgery for us, but actually agents that do things that we're not very good at that would actually help us to be more productive. So the data piece, by the way, is, I made the reference that think about how we use data in a standard collaboration. PowerPoint with badly drawn bar charts. Nothing wrong with the product, it's the content that's actually in there. But we have a very 2D static view of the way we use data in any kind of collaboration. We now have amazing tools that can bring that data to life so that you can actually be in a co-collaboration in a room where you're actually got your hands in the data. You're actually visualizing and modeling a scenario, and then collaboratively you say, what if? Let's remodel. These dynamic models can fundamentally change the way we think about solving problems with real data that is actually going to have great impacts on our business. Just think about the linear process we would have gone through previously to arrive at an answer which we could probably solve within half an hour. And I think that's a reimagination of the way we use data in space is going to change a lot of the way we think about space. But I also think we now need to think about bringing the agent into that space with us. And I'll give you an example. I do not believe that we are very good meeting facilitators. In fact, meeting facilitation is actually is a trained skill that the vast majority of business people do not have. And as a direct result of that, most business meetings are very poorly run and badly managed. And I think it's perfectly possible for us to have a holographic avatar AI agent that is actually in the room, sat right there in the room, facilitating that meeting. All we have to say is, can you just bring up that model of the thing we were looking about, that drug development we were doing? Boom, up appears on whatever kind of display we want. Now, can you just help do that? And she's going, okay, guys, we've got to this particular point, but I don't think we're actually solving this particular problem. How about we might, she's not passive, it's not an Alexa, they're now contributing by listening, understanding context, tone, direction, purpose, and actually helping us and facilitating us to get to a better thing. Wouldn't that be the kind of meeting you would want to be part of? Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be the kind of thing that you would come into the office to be with your peers to do? We have this opportunity to do this, and we shouldn't lose that.
Interestingly, we've got a real-world experience of exactly that in our business just last week. It was a real good insight to me, and my mind just went racing of how we can do this better. But a real-world example is my project management team, my PMO, came to me and said, look, we've got some really big projects coming up, but we want to change our scheduling system. We want to move out of traditional Gantt form kind of projects, to do something that is a bit more collaborative. There's programs out there which are really supported by AI backend. I thought, okay, fine. Right, and I said, no, trust me, it's going to be great. And basically, the way it was sold to me was we're going to bring all the people who know how to deliver a project. They may not be project managers, they may not be producers, they may not work in production. We are using the right skill sets from the business to understand all the critical requirements to deliver this project. And we're not going to do it in Gantt form, we're going to bring everyone together. And we did this as an online exercise to begin with. So you could jump into essentially what was a Miro board, and everybody could just put their sticky notes and go, well, this is important to me, this is important to me, this needs to happen before here. So collaboratively, we kind of moved a Miro board around with Post-its and sticky notes and whatever. And then in the back end, AI does all the sequencing, all the scheduling, all the critical paths, all the dependencies, identifies that we were going to be 6 months late, and it was done in a heartbeat. And I just thought, this is incredible, because we talk about collaboration. There are team members who would run a mile from this meeting if we said, could you come and help schedule a project? Like, that's not what I do. And I immediately went to, well, what if we put this on a big screen that was interactive, and you could bring everyone together and work through this? So I always think of, employers are also our customers in many ways. So you can bring these spaces together, and then if you added an extra layer of an agent to support that process, I just think that's really exciting. And it made scheduling of projects fun, which turns some people on for sure, but it's not everybody. And it really made it feel inclusive, and everybody felt like they had a part of the process, and their voices were heard, and made people buy into that project. And it's been a really fascinating experience.
Absolutely. And so whenever we talk about AI, the term automation comes up and data comes up, right? So these are the two aspects that I want to drill a little bit into. And I'm seeing some vendors, and automation in AV has been around for the longest time, automation and analytics. Is automation being relabeled as AI by many? And what are those true AI advancements that differentiate it from how we have done automation, maybe in a room setting or in an office setting in the past? And let's first get to that, and then I have a follow-up.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are done by automation today, and that's sort of the basis of the design of a lot of our spaces. But going back to having an agent that can reason over what's happening in the room. So instead of the camera switching to Julian when he starts talking because it sees a face, it hears his voice, the room should know who Julian is. And so when I ask Julian a question, the camera should already be moving to highlight him on the screen for the remote participant, because everyone else in the room, we're all going to look at him when I ask him a question. So it's sort of understanding the flow of the meeting, understanding the environment, making decisions, without you having to say, hey, conference room, open the shades, hey, bring up the whiteboard. It just happens as a part of the natural conversation because it's contextually aware.
Yeah, it's actually replacing automation in many ways. It's not an extension of automation. So if you think about automation as the mapping from stimulus response, right? Keyword to lower the shades. That works, but the challenge we've always had, and this is what I meant by the grand challenges in AV, when you said I want to have an automated shade closer worldwide for all of my offices based on intent and situation of the room. You could, in the old days, have hired integrators and written lots of code about what's the time of day in Tokyo, given the temperature and the sun angle, we should lower the shades because it's going to get hot in the room, etc. Instead, you could understand context across all 3 layers. So by the way, there's sort of 3 layers of this stack that have to exist, right? The sensors and actuators, the edge compute, and then the cloud piece. If you have all 3 of those things, you have flexibility to build product and value everywhere. And in this case, you could have intelligent cameras that are tracking, who's in the space, and you hear someone say, I can't see the glare there's a lot of glare on the screen, or it's a little too bright in here. Well, a little too bright in here is very contextual. If it's 9 o'clock at night, you don't lower the shades. That would be strange. But Julian, your chief of staff meeting AI, could then detect that stuff's happening and say, how about we just dim the lighting and bring up the contrast on your PowerPoint. Sorry, they're still using PowerPoint.
I think data gathering and data capture is something that I think we're going to be learning more and more how to use it and how best to efficiently use that. And just with my kind of like urban planning hat on for a minute, one of the key conversations we have today in building is how do you make it efficient? How do you make it sustainable? How do you make it LEED Platinum? How do you make it more energy efficient? Not just in the building creation of that building, but it's running and operational. So we're all aware of BMSs, building management systems, that are helping us understand how a building is maintaining itself. But I think there's a real great opportunity for the industry to really understand what is a BMS and how far does the BMS go? How does that fit into green principles? How can you monitor a building's energy output and see that data, record that data, understand the CO2 emissions of your building? Not just that, but of your people, your flow, your user. How far do they come from home? Do they take train, travel, plane? You can really start to aggregate this data, and it makes you create much more informed and better decisions of even small choices of how you want your teams to move around and the choices you're making around that, where you may have your meeting place. What's the most efficient place to gather based on 300 staff or 6,000 staff? Those kind of data-driven insights that I think can be done from how our lighting's running to how our aircon's been on 24/7 in the downstairs bathroom. All those things, I think that's where data is going to become really, really critical. Yeah. How you aggregate that is beyond my knowledge, but I think there's something beautiful about that opportunity.
It's interesting. I keep going back to this where we are right now, and I think given everything that's ahead of us, we have a unique opportunity to be honest with ourselves about where we are today. And I think one piece of honesty, a realization, is that we've been awful at how we've actually built our data in organizations, locked away into these silos, and often deliberately so that you can't liberate that data and actually do anything with it. And I think building management systems, great example of that. We've built over many years these very powerful building management systems, and yet we have no greater knowledge about what's actually happening in the workspace than we did before we did it. And I think this is where AI has a very, very powerful role to play. So we talk about automation, but in many cases, it is about how do I actually unlock the data that I have in that and there and over there and be able to actually aggregate that data, normalize it, get it into a state where I can actually get real insights, not from thin data, but from a very rich contextual view of everything that's going on within the organization. And the very fact that I'm now writing Python code, I've never written code in my life. And now I can actually say something to my AI personal assistant. She's writing all the Python code in front of me. Now, apparently, according to the way that AI works, I own that code. So I'm now a developer. So, but the reality is that we now have an opportunity to do with API integration and integration across this whole thing with this normalized data stack to do the level of automation that we either gave up doing because it took us way too long and too much money, and we can actually do that now at lightning speed and achieve things we never thought we would be able to do. So I think there is some confusion between what's machine learning and what's automation and what's AI, but who cares? The reality is that we are now able to do things that we really did think we...
I love that there's an honest acknowledgement of these different silos, especially on the building management side and data collection and things, because the value, of course, if you could understand what's happening in the rooms at any given moment, both at a team level and individual level, but also at a building size level or a campus level in a coherent way, that was the dream of the smart building initiatives in the 90s, I think, and it just didn't get there. There's two things you hinted at, Julian, that I think are interesting. One is the emergence of that data used to require things like, I'm going to build an API for you, let's go work on that. That's structured data kind of thinking in the old way. It's like the old algorithmic approach to things. So data was trapped, right? Now it's not. It doesn't have to be structured. You just hand it to another LLM and craft a query and go. It was also trapped behind application layers. So you would require a company to say, here's a dashboard I've built you, here's a visualization tool that you can now look at your data in. But that meant you had to already know what you needed to ask. And it took a lot of energy to go after the answers to that data. So we're at a really interesting point now where unstructured data means we bring it all together in really coherent, interesting ways. And you can ask any question. I mean, these days there are plenty of startups that are now building AIs that generate visualizations for you on the fly. You don't need to go get a dashboard. You just need to ask that tool, build me a dashboard, and shows me these 3 insights. Thank you. And you're on. It's exciting.
Yeah, and just carrying forward that conversation, and this is essentially the notion of the high-impact workplace, which is you take the power of the best in Pro AV, next-generation Pro AV control platform, and merge it and integrate it with all the intelligence that AI brings to the table, and do it in a very holistic way, and also leveraging, bringing into the folds the entire spectrum of smart building technologies. And I know Q-SYS is doing a lot of work on that. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting where we're sitting right now, I think. In all honesty, I've always thought, and I've always been very interested in this idea that the user experience doesn't start with the moment I click start my meeting, right? It started the day I woke up and decided whether I'd go into the office or not, and who's present in that office, and how collaborative is that space that if I was in Zurich last week, how collaborative is that space? Should I go to it, or is it better for me to make my call in the hotel room? That's the beginning of the user journey that we should be able to support, and that means these were insurmountable problems in the past because you had to, again, have independent systems that somehow gave me wayfinding and took me to the office and then provided digital signage to instruct where I head. And that terminology is going to start to go away, I think. We'll be building these coherent workflows that span everything from team enablement and personalization around that team to where did that moment start? Did the team form when I sent an email and said we should brainstorm on that? Probably. And then how does that all come together while we're in that meeting space with a digital agent that drives it? You need access to the data that's at that building scale that's not necessarily built inside of each of those independent products.
Given the time, I just want to move to another really pertinent topic. And I think anytime we talk about AI, the conversation is never complete unless we talk about real-world implementation challenges, particularly privacy, security, governance. So going back to our Frost & Sullivan survey, another interesting stat was this latest AI survey that we wrapped up in November of last year. 21% of the organizations that were in the proof of concept phase the year before that number moved down to 12%. And so one would think that difference went to AI implementation phase, but that was not the case. It was split half and half. So 4% moved to AI implementation at some scale in their organization, and 5% took a step back. So they moved back to, we want to learn more about AI. We want to wait and watch before we bring it into our organization. And that's the reality, that security, privacy are top of mind. So how are you addressing this when you speak with your customers or within your organization? Because there's a fine line between productivity and privacy, and especially with sensors all over, employees feel they are being monitored. How should we address that real world challenge?
I'll take the first hit on that, and in the sense that there's a lot of, I think, we as human beings, this kind of goes to Julian's point about the future, right? We as human beings, we're barriers to our own success because we don't understand it, right? There's a whole lot of stuff we just don't understand, and that can create barriers to growth and change. The generation coming behind us and the workforce coming behind us are going to be native AI folk. They're going to be native to the technology, and they're far more embracing that technology. We've embraced technology, particularly wearable tech. I think is going to be a real big key portion of AI, particularly around employee movement, employee satisfaction, how they interface with the building, how it interfaces with workflows. I think wearable tech is going to be something interesting. Arguably, you've all got a badge on, you're wearing some form of wearable tech. When you're willing to hand your details over to somebody with a scanner when you walk in the room, you're willing to put your thumbprint on your iPhone. We have done that, and there was, it was all a bit scary to begin with, but we've all kind of accepted that is the way that we're working. Who's got a key fob at work that you have to put your thumb on to log into the network? So I think there is a real concern and an understanding concern about employee privacy and how employee or data is captured or customer data is captured. That's not going away. And I think as the native AI generation are coming behind us, they're going to be more embracing of doing that because it's part of their DNA. Who's got kids who give all their details over on Roblox? Always. It's just part of their way of working. What we have to do as leadership in the space and advisors in the space is to talk about transparency and how transparent you make that application of information accessible, or what you are doing with it. And I think that's something that we have to figure out, is that transparent model, which can be a bit scary from a leadership point of view at times. But I think if we make it transparent, make it more open information, then the generation comes behind us that's more going to be native users are going to be far more accepting of it. I think we're a little bit in the way of it because we're just a bit scared of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting event happened a couple of weeks ago. You're all aware of it. There was another proclamation from the White House, and this one was about Stargate. And this was basically the formation of Stargate, a $500 billion project to build our AI infrastructure in the United States. Everyone was going, I just don't think we have that amount of money. There's not that amount of money available to do that. Within a week, that exact same amount of money was wiped off the stock price of a single company, because there was this fear that a pretty much hitherto unknown AI bot could actually change the way we thought about AI. I think a lot of people are rethinking the balance between data privacy, security, and what have you as a direct result of that event. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, do we not have fear? Are there threats? Of course there are threats. There are significant threats, and it's something that we need to plan to do this. But at the end of the day, as human beings, we tend to actually balance risk versus reward. And I think at this moment in time, the realization is that there is a danger that if we don't relax some of the things that we've put in place, or we don't just renegotiate some of those, we might actually be out of the game, and other people are going to take advantage in the global economy. And we've already seen a few things in Europe with regards to new policy around AI, and a renegotiation around GDPR in that respect, for example. So I think it's a really, really important topic. But at the end of the day, I think the argument for acceleration into AI is going to outweigh a lot of the conservative views. We are going to have to strengthen legislation in a number of areas. We're going to have to really lock down on cybersecurity and data sovereignty and a whole range of other things. But I don't see that slowing down AI.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to value proposition. You know, I think a lot of companies and organizations are thinking about, okay, how do I use AI to boost productivity, to monitor activity, and those sorts of things. And employees are going to naturally push back on that, and customers especially. But if you're designing systems with the end user in mind and providing real-world value, you're going to drive adoption. You know, I'm much more likely to opt in if I can find a place to park, order my lunch, know that everything's going to be set up for me when I arrive, know who's in the office. So those are all things that are important to me, and I'm absolutely willing to give up some of my personal privacy and access to my calendar, access to my preferences, access to those things, because it's a value to me.
That's a great point, because there's a social contract between you and as the data provider and the value you're getting, the direct connection. And I think where we can go wrong, and it sounds like, I'm not surprised by your numbers, by the way, because a lot of early discussion in AI in the enterprise space has been not at that level. It's been, how do we leverage the data to provide insights to do better real estate planning and things. And as exciting as that is, and I'm very excited by it, you can't just build that system alone, because then you know, remember the days where there'd be a camera in your conference room and people would talk about the cap? How do we find the cap for the camera? Or does it turn to the wall, right? That stuff went away. Why? Because we now know the value of that camera. It allows me to collaborate with people that aren't in the room, of course. But if we had deployed just those cameras as an analytics engine to make better decisions about occupancy, they wouldn't be here today. I've seen a lot of companies that have tried that, and they fail. They can't get past that adoption barrier. Because there's down here is the GDPR piece and the certification piece and compliance piece. We can do that. It's the adoption rate and the acceptance by users that we should be focused on. If you're designing products or you're deploying products and thinking about supporting your users, you have to really live at that layer and think about where's that value, right? It's that social contract.
So, you know, it's not just an IT problem. It's a leadership issue, change management, and, you know, making those benefits transparent and really communicating that to the employees. And a lot of employees are concerned about losing their jobs. So it's very much a leadership imperative. Quick fire, less than 60-second response. You know, what do you want the audience to walk away with? One big piece of advice as they get further on their AI journey or start their AI journey.
I think you should maybe think about the end of the algorithmic era. So designing and then bringing products to market in the way we've done it in the past is no longer the case. I can ask an AI to do things for me. So in the old days, you would build a product by envisioning an algorithm, you would embed it into a piece of hardware, you'd bring it to market, and we would live with it for 7 years. I can ask an AI, hey, is there a whiteboard in the room, and what's written on that whiteboard? That's a OCR whiteboard camera that I just leveraged from a piece of hardware in the space. It's changed.
My piece of advice to anyone really is don't be the barrier, for one. You know, don't use technology for the sake of using technology. Use data for purposeful, meaningful needs and requirements. And I think there's always an approach that I see with a lot of people that I work with around, we just need it. I'm like, what do you need? Ask appropriate questions, understand the question, understand the need, understand what the space is trying to do, and use AI to make good decisions. Don't make it for the sake of just making decisions for making decisions' sake. And I think always remember there is always an analog moment in that room. There's always a human being, and we have to always remember that human being is probably more important than the AI, but AI is supporting that human being to be their best selves.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot from an enterprise perspective about what's right for the companies, but now I'm going to get personal. I believe that within 2 years, everyone in this room, everyone in the world probably will have an AI personal assistant. I would suggest to you start your journey now if you don't have one. If you need help, I'll help you how to build one. But why do I think that's important? Because number one, when you have something that's personal to you, and you start learning, it starts learning you, and you start learning it, and you start to discover the art of the possible. That's how you start to actually lower your fears and actually seek opportunities that these things can do. I promise you, if you haven't already tried this, you will be amazed at what you can actually achieve on that basis. So start, don't wait. Start tomorrow, today, in the next 5 minutes, and start to actually build a personal assistant that will actually help guide you as well as you're figuring this whole journey out.
And don't be afraid. I think so many people hear AI, oh, it's going to take my job, it's going to generate content for me, it's going to write all the code for me, it's going to plan and manage everything. You know, that's my core business. But it's an exciting time to think differently. Think about all those things that you or your teams are doing that could be way more effective leveraging these tools. And just experiment. I think some of the main breakthroughs, and even just sitting on this panel, I've got a whole slew of ideas that I want to try now, just from random things to help make my teams more productive or make the customer experience a little bit more interesting. It's an exciting time because it's wide open. We're defining the possibility, and we're defining what AI will be within our space and within our environment. So it's just don't be afraid. Get out there and try it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think we have time, 5 minutes, for a few questions from the audience, if anyone has any.
The movie's about to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, don't be scared of AI, and there's this
Right.
booming music.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very accepting. Oh, well, do you no? Okay. I think everything we said resonated, so
Well, hold on. If we have a little time, let's ask a little question of our audience, get a bit of interaction here. Who in the audience believes that your job is threatened by AI? Well, that's a good start.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're either the least reactive audience I've ever had, or none of you actually believe that your job is at threat. Well, I will tell you, I sit on, I'm a member of a global think tank called the Future Talent Council, which is trying to tackle this whole issue about the impact of AI on talent and education. And all the studies that have come back from all the universities in the latest research shows that there isn't the kind of job displacement that everyone's been doing the fear-mongering. Mostly what's going to happen is effectively retasking and the kind of 90-10 thing that I was talking about, so that actually this is probably the greatest opportunity you have in your career to achieve things that you never thought you would be able to do. So don't worry about losing your job. That's the one thing.
And Julian, if I may add to that, I think about 5 years back, and I'm an analyst, a tech analyst, we were told that there will be no analyst in the future because AI is going to do our. If you feed the data into the system, those reports will be generated. But I absolutely disagree. There is that human element, our ability to see beyond numbers, to put in that reasoning, which means that most of us, I don't know if all of us, most of us will continue doing what we are doing, but in a different capacity, at a more strategic, more creative level. So that's the beauty of AI. I think this is a great point to wrap up the panel. Thank you so much again. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.